Well, greetings, my beloved clients and friends. I've been promising to do this video for several months now, and so today's finally the day I'm going to do it. I'm going to talk about why I invest in America and why I'm a long-term buy and hold investor and why I don't get too worried about the headlines and the current events and the news, and whether it's about interest rates or inflation or the Fed or Trump or Elon or Powell or Ukraine or Russia or Israel or Iran or Iraq, oil prices, price of eggs, the border crisis or immigration, or all these headlines that are motivated to freak people out and to take action which is maybe not in their best interest. And so let's talk about the United States, why it's such a great place to invest long term, why it's been that way for a long time, and why it will continue to be that way. So let's start with the S&P 500, which is the Standard & Poor's 500, which is the 500 most valuable publicly traded companies in America that are profitable. That's the criteria to get in there. And the way it's set up is if you invest in the S&P 500, you invest in these 500 companies, and you invest according to their size. So the largest companies get the biggest amount. So if you put in $500, it wouldn't effectively be $1 to each of those 500. The most would be to the biggest. It would be allocated by market cap. So the biggest gets the most money, and the smallest gets the least. And as they get bigger, they get more money. As they get smaller, they get less money, or allocation to that S&P 500. So it's really weighted in favor of the best of the best. And I've used this analogy before, but you're not investing in the United States economy, or you're not investing in stocks per se. You're investing in 500 stocks within the U.S. economy, within the stock ecosystem. So it's the best of the best. It's like the all-star team, okay? And it's the best of the best currently. I just recently went through like the top 50, and they've changed since a few years ago. There's new names on there that weren't in that top 50, and there are names that are no longer in the top 50 that were in the top 50. So it's the best currently, okay? So it stays current, and as an investment, that's what you would own, and it's been the standard, and it's been hard to beat. They say 80% of managers, active managers, fail to beat the S&P 500. So it's the standard by which they're measured, and most of them can't beat it. And it's averaged about 12% a year over a long period of time. That's including dividends being reinvested. And so basically, if you're a company in that S&P 500 and you're growing at about 12% a year, you're about keeping pace with the pack. If you're not growing at 10% a year, 12% a year, you're falling behind, and you might even fall off the list. And if you're growing at faster than 12% a year, you're moving up in the list. So you're owning the 500 best at that time, and they're all competing. And for anyone that's ever worked in corporate America, and you've had some type of leadership position, you know that at the end of the year they have a meeting and they say, well, congratulations, you hit your goal. Here's your goal for next year. 10% higher, right? 10 to 15% higher, because that's what those companies got to do to stay in the S&P 500. So Now, why is that such a good investment? Why um, has it done so well, and why do I believe it will continue to do well? And it's because the system that America has put in place over the centuries is like a machine that that favors these companies. Okay, and when I talk about the institutions of America, I'm talking about like their legal system, their tax system, their accounting system, the education system, the retirement system, all favor these companies. Okay, and not only that, the American culture has certain advantages to it. So let me get back to the systems and let me talk about that culture. And for reference, this year, we're 6 months into the year, European stocks have outperformed US stocks. So people say, well, you should be allocating some to Europe right now because it seems like, with everything going on in America, you're probably better off investing in Europe right now. And as a trade, that might work, but as a long-term investment, I wouldn't do it. And I'll tell you why. Because the system and the culture is just different. Now, let me give you an example. Let's say a kid in America put a lemonade stand in front of his house for the summer, make a little money, be industrious, right? Let's say a little kid in Europe did the same thing. Now, here's typically what would happen in Europe. Let's say this thing started going well, this little lemonade stand business. What would that European entrepreneur do? He'd probably start upgrading and maybe getting nicer stemware to serve the lemonade in, and source better lemons and better sugar and water from the Alps. And maybe he'd start, and as it continued to grow, maybe he'd get white linen tablecloths and put a nice striped awning for his customers and have a violinist play and have little flowers and a scenic spot on the banks of the River Seine, and the owner would be right there making sure everything is perfect. And this would be the most wonderful lemonade experience you've ever had. And it'd be the place where you'd want to take someone to impress them on a first date. And if things continued well, that'd be the place where you took them to propose to them, because it's such a cute, romantic, wonderful experience, Compare that. And the owner probably lives on the second floor, just watching everything, making sure everything's perfect, right? Above this thing. And that's his one store, it's his baby, and he puts everything into it, right? And it's the best lemonade you ever had. Compare that to say how the American kid would run his lemonade stand. And it started going well, guess what he would do? Get a cute kid and put him on the corner a block away. And little by little, understand the traffic patterns of the city and end up with a lemonade stand on every high traffic corner in the city. Expand it statewide, continue to grow this thing nationwide, get his lemonade into, package it up, put it in every grocery store and convenience store in the country, manufacture it in China, give money to the politicians to support his business and to clear the roadblocks for him. He'd have access to the U.S. capital markets to finance the growth of this business and put a marketing, advertising juggernaut behind this thing and become the largest lemonade business in the world, right? And which one would have the better lemonade? I tell you if it were my choice of where I would want to drink lemonade, it'd be at that European one. But if I were to invest in one of those two companies, it'd be in the American one. And that's America's approach to business. They don't make the best hamburger in the world, but they make the best hamburger business in the world, McDonald's. And they don't make the best coffee in the world, but they make the best coffee business in the world, Starbucks. And if you go to Stanford in their MBA program and your final project and your thesis is, this is what the theses read like at Stanford. Their objective, their mission is to become the global leader in fill in the blank, right? And that's the approach of American business. It's different, right? Their definition of the best is different than in Europe. And if I wanted to get stuff like clothes or food or a dining experience or any kind of experience or any type of high quality product, get it in Europe. But if I wanted to invest in a company, I'd do it in America because that's their approach, right? And it's much more investable, and their systems benefit that. The legal system, the laws are written to clear the path for these big corporations. The legal system, the system of corporations in America is just suited to give these companies room to grow. The GAAP system of accounting is designed for those companies to report. It just is in their favor. The tax system, Trump lowered the taxes for them, and it's just designed for those companies to flourish. The education system in America is designed to produce the labor force that they need. They ask those companies, what do you want us to produce? And that's what the schools and universities produce. It's all in favor of these companies because it benefits the country. It benefits their employees, right? They give their employees a salary and health care and retirement, and in return they get rich. That's just the way the system went. And in return, the government gets taxed from these companies. So it's a win-win. And the system of lobbyists in America is designed for them to get the laws they need. The capital market system, Wall Street in America, is the best in the world to get them the capital they need. So they get the capital they need, they get the labor they need, it all feeds these companies. It's designed to make them prosper. It's like that, and that has evolved over time, but it's the best system in the world. Maybe in Korea you could say it's better, because in Korea, their economic policy, when they were trying to recover out of the Korean War in South Korea, their economic development plan, they got together a handful of wealthy families and they said, okay, we're gonna switch to capitalism, and we're gonna assign these industries to this handful of families. They call them chaebols. And for example, Samsung, Hyundai, Lotto, LG, and there's a few more, but those are like the four biggest ones. And so basically the government put these companies on rails. They said, our economy is going to depend on you. We're counting on you to be big, employ people, produce GDP, pay taxes, give these people wages and benefits, and as you build out these factories, we're going to get out of your way. We're going to clear the path for you to grow, and you're going to, when you build this new factory, you're going to bring power and water to that city and housing to those employees. And in return, you're going to get phenomenally wealthy. And in return, the economy of Korea is going to go up. I think 50% of the population of Korea works at this handful of half a dozen companies. And it's been a huge economic success, you could say. And it was, manufactured by the government and designed, and they work hand in hand, and they allowed these companies, these families, to become phenomenally wealthy. And if I could, I'd invest in them. And I tried to figure out, how do I invest in Samsung, because it's like a no-brainer. It has the wind at its back. It's on rails, you know what I mean? But it's really hard to. And the U.S. system is less overt than that, but it's very similar. Not to that extent of these 5 hand-picked companies. And maybe I'm a little bit naive. Maybe they have the relationships are more intertwined officially than I know, but it's a similar system, and this one is more investable. The S&P 500 is, of the two, the S&P 500 is the one that's investable. That one in Korea, I can't get my money in. I think it's limited to the families and maybe the government and the people of Korea, but it's really hard to get money into them, right? Whereas the S&P 500 is easy. And it's similar to what happened in Russia when Reagan said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall. So they switched to capitalism, and they said, okay, all these state-run businesses, we're going to hand them out to you Russian oligarchs. You're going to get phenomenally rich, but you're going to pay us taxes, and you can employ our people, and you're going to drive our economy. Very more overt, more official, kind of like Korea, but that similar thing is in America. Hopefully less corruption. Those are the rails that this S&P 500 has. Okay, and that's why I don't get worried about the day-to-day ups and downs of the headlines in the news, because I know that this machine is built to win. It has a tailwind, you know what I mean? And you could see it. There's this thing called the Fed put and the Trump put, and which means that if things got really bad, the Fed would step in and fix it and make sure that this machine that the American economy depends on would not blow up. And we've seen it in action, right? In 2008, the global financial crisis, when these greedy guys almost blew it up, the Fed stepped in, and the government stepped in. Those companies became too big to fail. And Ben Bernanke, they called him Helicopter Ben, and he said, if I have to, I will put cash into helicopters and fly them over every big city in America and just pour the cash out, but I'm not going to let this economy fail. There's a backstop. There's a put. Same thing we saw in COVID. The entire world economy shut down, and we saw pictures of Shanghai and the streets desolate. In Italy, and then even it came to America shores, and in Los Angeles there was no traffic on the freeways, and in 3 days the smog went away because people got shut in. The economy came to a complete and utter standstill. And what happened? The government started issuing checks. They did not allow it to fail. Okay? When Trump, there is a backstop. And Trump has a close eye on this. And I'm not saying Trump is the key to success. It doesn't matter. When he won his election in 2020, and you saw on stage, who was on stage? The captains of industry, Mark Zuckerberg and Elon and Jeff Bezos, and the guys that run these companies were there celebrating the win. But guess what? If the other team would have won, it'd be the same people on the stage. They give money to both sides, and whoever wins, they win. And so, in Trump's first term, he really had an eye on the markets, and it was a gauge of how well he used it as a gauge of how well he was doing. and he did things whatever he could to influence that, to make the market win, so it looked like he was winning. And this time around, it seemed like he wasn't so interested. But when the rubber hit the road, and some of his actions threatened the bond market, he switched on a dime, right? Because he knows the importance of that machine and must keep running. It's essential to the U.S. economy. And when his immigration stuff said, wait, they're taking our labor force, they're taking our cheap labor force, right? When his buddies that he has hotels too, and hotels and farms and the food industry and hospitality, they said, wait, that's messing up our business. He turned on a dime and he said, hey, those that are our labor force that feeds this machine, don't touch them, right? And so they're beholden to the machine. So if you're invested in that machine, you got protection, and that machine is going to continue to run. Doesn't matter who's in office or what's happening with interest rates or inflation or the Fed or overseas. It is running, right? And it's what keeps the economy going, and the powers that be know that, and the people that Trump brought in this time are shot callers from that industry, and they got a pulse on it, and that's why they told him, hey, stop that, you're messing up the machine. And let's talk about the retirement system in America. If you have a 401k, right, what do you do every paycheck? And this goes, we're talking about hundreds of millions of people in America. Every paycheck, they put a percentage of their paycheck to feed the machine. Every paycheck, a little bit goes in. And the gurus tell you got to put at least 10% or at least 15%. In order for you to have a comfortable retirement and retire as a millionaire. That's what Dave Ramsey says to millions and millions of people every chance he gets. And millions and millions of people listen to him, and billions of dollars from everybody's paycheck goes in, every paycheck, to feed this machine and give those companies the capital they need to continue to grow. It's like putting a mill next to a river, and that river turns the wheel, right? That's the money that's coming from 401ks that goes in every single week to grow that thing. And that's just one of the drivers on top of the education. All right, that's the retirement system of America supporting that machine. I already said the education system of America supports that machine. The accounting system of America supports that machine. The tax system of America supports that machine. The legal system of America supports that machine. The American mindset, their approach to business, the culture of America supports that machine in a way that is foreign to Europe. And if you want to read a great book, there's this book called Democracy in America by Alexis de Tocqueville. It was written in the early 1800s. And I was amazed as I'm reading it, how relevant it is for today, even though it was written over 200 years ago. And it was written amazingly by this young French aristocrat in his early 20s. And he came to America to survey America. And he went to New England, he went to the West, which at that time was like Ohio and Illinois. And he went to the South. He read all kinds of books. He spoke to all kinds of leaders. He read our laws and court documents, and he went to our churches, and he just understood America on this incredible level. And he was doing this as a survey to report back to France, because he was a young French aristocrat, and to let them know, hey, what's going on the other side of the pond, and should we be worried? Is it a threat? Because at that time, France was a global superpower, and he said, we should be worried. They are building a system that is going to eat our lunch. And their culture is just different, and their laws are different, and their people are different. The way they work is different. Their approach to things is going to benefit their economy and their prosperity. And they're coming. They're gonna catch up to us, and they're gonna beat us. And he goes, this is what they do better. And if you want to read that book, it's amazing. And he understands the American mentality and the American workforce. And I mean, America, I'm not saying America is perfect, and there's a lot of things that I'm not crazy about. Like I said, if I was shopping for something I want or wanted to experience a nice experience, I'd probably go someplace else. But as far as investing, there's no machine in the world to compare to the US machine. And maybe European stocks are beating the US stocks in the first 6 months of this year. But that doesn't mean I'm moving anything, because it's like, you know, the Daytona 500. They might win one lap because I pulled into the pit to change tires, you know, or because I was behind a guy that I was having a hard time to pass, and they had a more open lane for one lap. But over 500 laps, America's going to win every single time. They have a better vehicle, and they have a better driver, period. It's not a level playing field. The system that America has for producing globally dominant companies is unlike any other in the world. And I said, and I'll say one other thing. So Elon Musk, he has his company Tesla, and they started with a factory in Fremont, California, in the Bay Area, and then they put another one in Shanghai, China, and then they put two more, one in Brandenburg, Germany, near Berlin, and one in Austin, Texas. So he has these four main factories. Okay, and so he has an intimate personal knowledge of the business landscape in Europe, Asia, and America. And man, when he talks about that Brandenburg factory, it gives him gray hair how hard it is to get those people productive, and the bureaucratic red tape, and how hard it was to build the factory, and how to get things approved and through the government. And you know, it's just not on rails like it is in America. The workers only want to work a little bit, and they have unions and pensions and holidays, and they'll have a 30-hour week, and they take breaks, and they're just not hard workers. And she goes, man, the Americans outwork those people. You could see it, like Alexis de Tocqueville. America is going to beat them every single time. Okay, but then he looked at the one in Shanghai. Okay, and he said, man, they're better workers than us. Those guys have the way we outwork Europe, and Europe complains about, oh, you Americans, you're all about work, which is true. There's truth to that statement. But man, those Asians, he said, man, they really outwork us. And you know, they have this mentality in China, 6-9-6. You work from 6 to 9, 6 days a week. That's 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. You know, and man, they're dexterous, and they're smart, and they're industrious, and man, they will outwork us. So they got us in that area, but they don't have the same. So as far as that's concerned, maybe they have an advantage. They do, but for everything else, our system is better than theirs. I'll give you one example. I own in the portfolio a Chinese company called BYD, and they make electric vehicles. They're a competitor to Tesla, and they've just surpassed Tesla as far as the number of electric vehicles that they make, and they're growing faster than Tesla. And since we bought the stock, it's doubled, and we've had it maybe 2 years. But guess what? I'm getting ready to sell it, and I'll tell you why. Because it's not the same owning that stock as owning a U.S. stock. In the U.S., when you own a stock, you are a part owner of that company. That's why you get so much mail, because they have to mail you that information because you're an owner, you're a shareholder, you are required to know what's going on, and you're allowed to vote because your vote matters. You are the decider of what happens to that company because it's your company, you're the owner. That is not the case when you own that BYD stock. Okay, and I didn't know this when I first bought it, because there's these things called ADRs, American Depository Receipts, where you could buy foreign stocks on the US stock exchange. Okay, and I thought that's what it was, but it's not. You do not have a direct interest in that company. They don't ask you to vote, and you're not in the capital stack. So what that means is, if you were to own a US company and for some reason it were to fail, they would take all the assets of that company and liquidate them and sell them off. And they'd pay off the bankers first, they'd pay off the bondholders second, and what was left over, they would divide it among the stockholders, the equity holders. Okay, so you have a direct interest, albeit behind the bankers and the bondholders, of the assets of that company. That is not the case when you own BYD stock, and I'll put that in quotes. I heard one investor describe it, a very astute and well-regarded and well-informed investor. He goes, man, those things, they have a name for it. It's not ADR. And he goes, if I were to compare it to something, I compare it to a baseball card, where, you know, the value of that baseball card goes up with the career of that player. But you don't have a direct interest in his income stream. You know, if something were to happen, you know, he couldn't sell his house and liquidate you so you get your money back. You know what I mean? And so that's the case with that BYD one, man. At any point, the rug could be pulled out from under us. And as great as the prospects for that company are, I don't feel secure. You know, China could say, hey, we don't want American investors owning our companies anymore, and pull the rug out from under us overnight. And China could say, you know, we don't want you to have access to our capital markets, and pull the rug out from us at any moment. That could happen, and it's too big of a risk, especially when they're going through trade negotiations. And as much as I like the company and think it has good prospects for growth, I don't want to take that risk, and I don't want to own it. So I mean, all these things considered, in America, these America's greatest companies are on rails. They're going downhill and they have a tailwind. And there's going to be times when they stop and people are going to get off. Hey, the train stopped, what happened? And people are going to get scared and get off, and the smart people are going to get on. And I'm telling you, don't get off, because this thing is on rails. The system is built to support them. That's why I could go on hikes and not worry about, you know, what's going to cross the ticker at any given moment. It's going to derail my investments. It's not going to derail the investments. It might shock them for a day or so, but as we saw in the global financial crisis of 2000, you stay on that train and it keeps going. COVID, same thing. Tariffs, same thing. So if you understand what you own and the system that has been built around these companies to support these companies and to almost, I don't want to use this word because you're not supposed to, almost ensure their success, right? That I don't want to use that word, but because it doesn't apply, but you get the point. It's not insured, but man, it's on rails. Okay, so this is why I invest in America. And the other reason is I understand the American system. So why would I try to pick stocks in an area where I don't have my boots on the ground, where that person has an advantage over me? I understand the U.S. legal system and tax system and accounting system and education system and retirement system and and their lobbying institutions, and I know that they all favor the investment that I'm making. And over long term, it's gonna continue to do what it's done for since Alexis de Tocqueville saw it. He said, man, this system is on a long-term trajectory up. Doesn't matter who's in the White House. Doesn't matter who's the Fed chair. On a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, quarter-to-quarter basis, you're gonna have ups and downs. That's just the nature of a liquid investment that has daily price recognition. But over time, this thing is gonna get you to where you wanna go. I tell my clients when we do quarterly reviews, I'm gonna call you 4 times a year, once a quarter, and I'm telling you right now, on average, 3 of those calls are gonna be good and 1 of them is gonna be bad. Don't worry about that, because the trajectory for your long-term investing goals and your personal financial goals, this is the vehicle that will get you there. Okay, so that's why I invest in America. The system is unlike what's available in Europe or Asia or Latin America. It's not perfect, but it's the best in the world. And those advantages, I don't see them being threatened right now or in the near future. These things have been built in place for a long time. Since Alexis de Tocqueville saw it, he said, they're built on a better foundation than we are. That's what he told France, his aristocratic friends, as far as economic prosperity. Now, I mean, going back to the analogy of the Daytona 500, and do we have a better car and a better driver? Absolutely. Is our car as aesthetically beautiful as the European one? Maybe not. Is our driver more friendly than the European one? Maybe not. Is our emissions more environmentally sensitive than theirs? Maybe not. But as far as winning the race, as far as crossing the finish line first, ours will every time. It's not going to win every lap, but it's just for the race that we're in, it is superior fundamentally, down to the screws. Okay, the way it was built is different than what's in Europe and Asia and Latin America, any place else, and it's gonna continue to win. That's why I'm not worried, and that's why I invest in America. And that's why, Warren Buffett figured this out early in his career, probably before he started in his career, and he saw the systemic benefits of the U.S. Economy, and he figured out how to invest in. That's why he was just a long-term buy and hold investor. That's why it worked, and that's why he was never trying to time the markets, because he knew that over time it would go up. The only time he would time the markets is when news got super bad and it was super scary, and that's when he would jump in with even more money, because he knew that the ship would be righted sooner or later and his investment would pay off. He is the most excited. He said, be fearful when others are greedy when others are fearful. That's what he said, because he knew that long term, he knew the direction of this ship. Okay? And so I hope this gives you some security and some confidence, and just turns that daily news into just white noise that I put on so I could sleep good at night. Okay? So hope you guys have a great weekend, and hopefully this was helpful. Have a great day.